alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Lukman Faily. I'm currently the Iraqi ambassador in Berlin, and I'm delighted to be asked to chair and also participate as a speaker in this important panel. This is more or less the second panel in relation to colleagues from the various international organizations or countries trying to reflect on the situation in Iraq and their country's priorities and importance. We're also delighted that some of our panelists are the first time in KRG and recently came to Iraq. We start with my colleague, the Ambassador Christiane Hohmann, who just presented her credentials as the new German ambassador to Iraq. There we have also our colleague from Netherlands, Ambassador Heinz, who's been here for just over a year. And finally, I have my colleague and friends, Fawzi Hariri, who served in the federal government as a minister for mining and manufacturing, and now he's also chief of staff in the government here in KRG. I will be giving an opportunity of 5 minutes each to talk about the topic, the theme topic, and also topic of interest for them, which I think it might be useful to convey to such an audience, and then thereafter maybe 2 rounds of Q&A, and then opening it to the public. Let me just say one specific issue. The themes we have here is engagement, mutual perception, and shared vision. I will be looking forward for your insights, your perspectives, and the theme of the conference is Iraq, addressing Iraq's immediate priorities. So I would like you to focus on those, but please, Ambassador Hohmann, welcome to Baghdad. Wish you the best and pleasant work, and please start with your 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Lukman, and good afternoon to everyone. As you can see, I did not pull out a prepared manuscript, so I cannot guarantee it's going to be 5 minutes or 3. But I think a lot of the elements of what we think are priorities or are the points we would like to transport have been brought up in the past 2 days, because we had a lot of very pertinent panels that looked into very detailed issues. Where do we stand in Iraq? But if there is one thing that I want to pull up here is this issue of perceptions. Because my feeling after the first 3 weeks in this beautiful country, there's a huge gap between the perception of Iraq in our countries vis-a-vis the perception of Iraq inside the country. And of course, it is the point, how do we actually move on to the next step in Iraq in the development of the country? We've had so many discussions about stability, but what I would like to put an emphasis on is one of the core points that needs to be developed rather quickly, I think, is private sector economy. Because this is where you have the job engine that this country needs to actually move forward and to create, as it was just mentioned by Deputy Assistant Secretary Victoria Taylor, to create the opportunities for young people coming to the labor market in this country. It of course starts in the education sector. How do you train the workforce for the future? What is the economic plan for Iraq? Because hydrocarbon currently being, of course, the source of revenue, but where is the economy going to go? What is going to be the economy of Iraq in 15, 20 years? What is going to be the dominating factor? I think some of these thought processes are very urgent to be done, but the next step is also how to actually translate this into concrete action. And when I look at the panel you had yesterday on the same topic, but the panel you have today as well, you see a lot of partners here in this country who want to accompany and assist Iraq in actually doing this. This is not something where you're somewhere out in the desert and everybody is waiting for you to finish it. It's something where we're here. However, We can assist, we can provide advice, we can tell you what has worked in our countries or what has not worked for us, but we cannot do it for Iraq. We need the counterparts here in Iraq to actually do this jointly, because otherwise it will not be sustainable. So I think this is sort of the core element which I think triggers quite a lot of elements. So political stability creates the possibility to do these plans. And it is, of course, also the balance, political balance in this country between Baghdad and Erbil, but even in the other regions. So this is one of the core points. Then how do we then improve business climate? How do we actually attract foreign investment to come here and to create jobs? For me, the point is job creation. We have so many young people who join the labor force every single year. What to do with them? Because hiring them in the state sector is not a sustainable solution. And that's exactly how do we come out of this and wedge into a viable economy which usually is dominated by private sector economy and not by state economy. So this is a tall order, I would say, but for me this is sort of the core of where the challenges are, but where we also have the core of our joint work here in the country.
Thank you. We will delve more into the topics, the two themes you raised. Ambassador Heinz.
Thank you, Lukman, and thank you, MERI, for inviting me at this panel. Looking forward to the discussion as well, of course. Well, I can make it myself very easy by simply saying I can echo 100% of what my dear German colleague has just said before. But I will elaborate a little bit more on the engagement, the type of engagement that we would like to see. Let me start by saying that our overarching goal as the Netherlands, I would also say as the EU and many like-minded countries, when it comes to Iraq, is to contribute to its sustainable, legitimate stability. I think that is very important. And it has been said before that stability is not only in the interest of Iraq and of the region. Before, one of the previous speakers said is the cornerstone for the Middle East, Iraqi stability. It is also, I have to be clear and frank about it, it's also in our own interest. If you have an unstable Iraq, an unstable Middle East, it will have immediately complications and impact for our own countries. Think about migration, but that's only one of them. Having said it, the Iraq, that's my second observation, the Iraq of, let's say, 2017-18 is not, luckily, the Iraq that we see today. We have tremendous changes seen, positive changes. ISIS has been defeated, is not an existential threat anymore. The most pressing humanitarian needs have been addressed. There have been several elections, and there will be elections soon, both in the Kurdish region and at the provincial level. So that's very, very positive indeed. That also implies that the kind of engagement that we as international community, but certainly also from the side of the Netherlands, would like to see with Iraq is a different. It's not that shocking, what I want to say. Yeah, it's a different kind of engagement. Engagement in the sense that it is a two-way street. It's not only the international community who wants to do something, but also Iraq itself. There should be also the commitment from Iraq, also financial commitment. That's important when it comes to the form. When we talk about the substance, the focus will primarily be on capacity building of well, the government structures, but also of the civil society. And also hopefully leading to, let's say, sustainable development of Iraq, both from a political, social, and economic point of view. When we talk about the engagement, and it has been discussed before in the other panel, I see a lot of parallels. I was very, very happy with what Dr. Farid Aladdin said. He basically talked about a kind of a productive diplomacy, and that is, I think, what we need to do as ambassadors. And basically, we're all ambassadors of our country, also the private sector. I think in doing that, we also avoid a situation, and that is also what Dr. Farid said, it's now not only about donation anymore, but it's really about cooperation.
Okay.
I think that is the kind of cooperation that we would like to see, that we would like to cherish, and that we work on day after day.
So here I would like you later on to articulate when you talk about the assistance level. Is it changing in its different type of assistant? What type and how do we help? I would like you to elaborate on that later. Dr. Fawzi.
Zohr Spas, thank you very much for inviting me for this session, and it's a pleasure to be in the presence of such distinguished diplomats and careers. Quite honestly, if we talk about the present capabilities of the new Iraq in terms of its diplomacy exposure internationally, we're talking from 2003 onwards. It's not being taken into consideration anything prior to that date. And I was lucky enough to be part of that setup from day one, the new Iraqi Foreign Ministry, as a Chief of Staff for Minister Hushar Zebari. And yes, we established the new Iraqi Foreign Ministry, we established the new policies for the Foreign Service of Iraq, and we benefited from the qualities and capabilities of many of our individuals who had joined us from diaspora and appointed them as representative, capable representatives and ambassadors to various countries around the world. The experience of the KRG goes well beyond 2003. If I was to minimize that, I would say that the exposure to the international community in the KRG started from the 50s and 60s and 70s of the last century. When everybody had Peshmerga here fighting for the survival, that message was not getting abroad. We didn't have the internet and the online services as we do today. There were young men and women from Kurdistan as students in a number of different countries, working and studying, and they became the actual representatives and diplomats that carried on the stories from Kurdistan to Europe and beyond. And therefore, the exposure and relationship of IKR or the KRG with most of the European countries is at least 50 years or 60 years old, much older than present Iraq policy. And that exposure led to these successes and the progress that you have seen in Kurdistan in many areas, be it diplomatic areas, be it education, development, infrastructure. A great contribution was from our friends in Europe and rest of the world who'd had the original relationship with us. Therefore, the relationship of the new international community with Iraq is much more limited over the past 20 plus years. And Iraq did not have the smooth transition that everybody was expecting. We had many issues in Iraq. We had sectarian problems, we had Al-Qaeda, we had ISIS for a number of years, we had foreign presence, and we have foreign interferences. And it's only in the last 2 to 3 years we have established somewhat a stabilized system of government where we are capable collectively, representatives from Kurdistan, from the Shia, from the Sunnis, as part of the state of law coalition that established a government, that are now opening up to the rest of the world and saying we are now ready to try and develop our issues. The world has always been waiting for us to give them that signal. They've been on the sidelines. Many have been more engaging than others, but now the engagement is free and it's available. Now, on this road, there is important for the international community to understand that they need to put into their calculation the share of the KRG as part of any deal they make with Baghdad. It is not enough to have a strategic deal with Iraq, with Baghdad, without highlighting which part of the deal belongs to Kurdistan. We are there, we are engaging, but it's important for our friends to highlight these issues. For every 10 projects you conduct in the rest of Iraq, we will be expecting at least 2 of those projects to be in the Kurdistan region. And we are open for that. Our investment laws are open for that. Our system of government is much more user-friendly in many aspects. And I'm not knocking off the Iraqi system of, but that is proven by the companies that have worked for us. So, what are the priorities in Iraq? 2 very important priorities. We need to decide, is Iraq a capitalist or a socialist system? What is it that we are running? Are we running a capitalist system or are we running a socialist system? Are we paying too much salaries into employers? Are we a charity, or do we pay people for their hard work? The other element that we need to determine for us is what system of government, as the President and others highlighted, is this a federal system or is this a centralized system that we are running in Iraq? And if it's federal, is it available to other parts of the country or not? These 2 elements will determine how we deal between Erbil and Baghdad, how we go on the road to fixing the challenges that exist between us. But also it will give our friends in the international community a clearer direction as to what is the best way of dealing, of investing, of communicating with Iraq. And I think I'll stop at that,
okay.
And I'll be happy to take any questions on this. Thank you.
Thank you for, so now I could see clearly you will be representative of the KRG perspective rather than your old hat of a minister in the federal government.
I'll do that as well.
Fair
I am
enough.
proud to do that as well.
No, that would be good. We also have 2 colleagues who are from Europe. They may have similar perspective, but I would like you to complement each other in the perspective of where we are, please. You also, I mean, from my view, I was given the task of reflecting it. As somebody who's charged to sell this country abroad in various countries and posts I've been, I do describe it as a roller coaster ride. A roller coaster in the sense that countries we try to sell and get partnership, Germany or Netherlands or any other country, they will have expectations to see us. Are we Iraq 1, version 1 for the last 20 years, or have we upgraded to Iraq 2? Are we in the transition from Iraq 1 to Iraq 2? And we need the help of our partners to help us to move to Iraq 2 version. The key questions Dr. Fawzi raised are fundamental in relation of definition of the state. The school of thinking, the philosophy, the economical model, how do they operate the governance process? Unfortunately, our friends in the West cannot help us with that. This is more to do with us Iraqis doing our homework, getting our order. Otherwise, sovereignty will be in question and other aspects will be in question. And I can assure you, our European partners don't want to participate in that side.
They can help.
They can help. Maybe the American can help. But the European don't have that obligation which the American have in relation to Iraq. I say this with clarity. So in here we have a key challenge on which European support, Western support, in relation to security, economical development, assistance of type, technology, knowledge-based, and diplomatic relationship. These are the 4 themes any ambassador come over here, they have on their plate. For us Iraqis to move on to version 2, we need to help them with regional stability, i.e. we are a supporter, a key partner in stability, not instability. We have to bear in mind, dear friends, prior to 2003, Iraq was the center of instability in every psycho perspective of any diplomat from any country. So that's the view. Iraq 1 required stability for some time. Delivery of that baby was not easy.
Yeah.
So regional stability, Iraq will play a part. Political reform is a major issue which we Iraqis need to deal with. And unfortunately, the Western support might be in some constitutional advice or whatever, but nothing more than that. If we want more, then there is a cost associated with it. Thirdly, the perception and the misconception. This is where me and my colleagues need to do a substantial, better job of selling the country. But for us to do that, we need to have the tools for it.
Correct.
This is not us selling the wrong package. This package we want to sell needs to be a substantial, good quality package. This is not a packaging issue, core product of it. Then the challenges we have and the obstacles, we need to be clear with our partners what they are. If we have issues with corruption, we need to clear how could you help us in our financial systems? Transparency. And unfortunately, lately, an issue of human rights and other issues has been added to the list from the Western perspective view of us. And finally, the shared vision of Iraq 2, which Dr. Fawzi is trying to get us to together, need to be articulated well. Then, Western countries will have a long-term vision and partnership with us. That's my view of somebody who's tasked with selling my country to the various capitals of the world. Now, let me put my, sort of chair hat on. So, Ambassador, you have been here just only a few weeks, so it's unfair to ask you what's your first impression. I think you need more time. But let me ask you, what task were you given to bring over to Iraq? What were you told your priorities? Make sure that the German Bundestag or others are aligned and the Chancellor program on Iraq is fulfilled. Please tell us.
Thank you so much. I mean, one of the first points you just brought it up. I mean, Prime Minister Soudani and Bundeskanzler Scholz met in January. They met back now in September in New York. And they actually agreed on quite an ambitious joint work plan, which has a lot of elements that pertain particularly to the economy. So we are already at that point that we want to see how can we actually tap what is always said the huge potential of a country like Iraq. So you have the population, you have the markets. So how can we take the step to actually use that and to move on and actually create the jobs, create the revenue, diversify the economy? And that's what the work plan in large portions is. So that, of course, is number one on my agenda, the implementation of that work plan. How can we do this? And this also goes to something that you just brought up, working on perceptions. Because the more we are able to bring in German business representatives, parliamentarians, politicians, to actually experience Iraq today, Baghdad and Erbil, the more we actually transport back people with a different view of this country than what you traditionally see when you just Google Iraq. I would challenge you, do that in English, Google Iraq, and you would be shocked what the first things are that come up, which is pictures of war. That's the only thing people who do not want to delve in will see, which also means the challenge we have is enormous. We have to really work against not only a public perception, but also political economic perception. And that is not done just overnight. This is why we always talk about stability, not only for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 year. We need medium to long-term stability politically, but then also for the economy, because, you know, investors are very nervous people. You know, they look at the conditions, can I make money? But they also look at, is it a place where I want to be medium, long haul? Is it worth my investment? So this is exactly where our challenge lies, to make sure people see the opportunities, to at the same time do something which I think has to be part of what we would call an honest partnership, which is, on the one hand side, recognize the progress that has been made. And nobody can take this away from Iraq. But we also have to be honest when we see challenges and see that things are going in a way that would risk exactly the path we have been on. And I think an honest partnership is what Iraq also needs. You don't see You don't need the people who gloss things over and give you only the sugar. Sometimes it's the lemon that helps you actually to move on better.
Okay, thank you. Ambassador, Netherlands engagement with Iraq, I would imagine they would want to focus on the economical development. Here, diversification of our economy, investment opportunities, where do you see Netherlands can focus on that? What sectors you think Netherlands can contribute in the development of Iraq toward Iraq too?
Yeah, let me start by saying, Lukman, that we also are looking for a long-term partnership. And in the framework of that long-term partnership, it's good to discuss, let's say, topics of common interest. I'll come back on that. But it's also good to discuss the challenges. Of course, we would like to see Dutch companies and investors coming to Iraq. But again, we don't dictate companies to come to Iraq. It's the companies themselves who make that decision. And in order for them to come to Iraq, it's important to have a transparent business climate, no corruption. And I've seen too many cases where Dutch companies do good things here, but they have problems simply by getting paid. Having said that, I see enormous possibilities. Coming also back to what Dr. Hariri said, making use also of the potential of the Iraqis, in our case, with Dutch roots, or the other way around, Dutch people with Iraqi roots. In the Kurdish region alone, there are 5,000 to 7,000 Kurdish people who do have, a Dutch passport, and they play an important role, for instance, when it comes to agriculture. We have many activities in the Kurdish region, making it more innovative, making it more, let's say, climate resilient, focusing, for instance, on potatoes, but not in the classic sense of the word, really high-tech, focusing on horticulture, seeds. That is very important, and we realize that the Kurds with that Dutch root can play an important role. No, even further, they play an important role. Having said that, indeed also our Prime Minister met Prime Minister Soudani in New York. They basically agreed upon having a partnership covering a lot of areas. Absolutely agriculture is one of them. The Netherlands knows also a thing or two about water management. Simply otherwise we would not survive as a country. We are well below sea level. Water management is another important topic. And I'm very happy that Iraq, and also especially the president, is very ambitious in that field. That's really crucial. And also would like to see cooperation on renewable energy. But there are many more topics of common interest, including, for instance, migration.
Good. Dr. Hariri, as somebody who worked in the central government, has a good contacts, you're fully aware of the politics between Baghdad and KRG. Heavy reliance on petroleum as a revenue is something of a curse and a burden and a blessing at the same time. What steps do you think should be taken or are taken in KRG specifically to diversify the economy? And how do you think the international community can support in that?
Shukran jazilan, Doctor. I'm not a doctor,
okay.
So thank you for that privilege, but I'm not...
I can give a PhD to anybody anytime, so please.
I think I only highlighted the experiment from KRG because, as I said, the relationship with and the exposure with the international community is much longer than the new Iraq. But yes, when I'm really talking about Iraq as a whole. Let me start with the question of what makes international companies be interested in coming to do business in Iraq. What's unique about Iraq? They can come and do business in Kuwait. They have oil and they have money. They can do it in the UAE. They can do it in East Asia. They can do it in many countries. So what is unique about Iraq? There is nothing. Okay? So we need to be able to sell ourselves and provide an environment where a businessman will be attracted into coming here. Foreign direct investment needs attraction, like beautiful things. So without that, we can talk about investment until cows come home. Nobody will come. We need to fix our financial institutions. Look at the state of the of the dollar in relation to the Iraqi dinar. Now, we have a solid economy of that is oil economy. We have great resources. We have more money coming in than going out, yet the Iraqi dinar keeps falling down. Why? Because the management is flawed, and we need to deal with that. We need to provide an infrastructure for our financial institution that gives confidence for international countries and businesses to be able to conduct financial transactions without hesitation. That needs to be worked on. Our investment law, we need to provide greater incentives to businesses, to countries to come and work in Iraq. We have signed many contracts for oil exploration in Iraq and southern Iraq. Nothing has materialized because the reality on the ground is different from the paper with the signature on. It's not working, and therefore we need to fix these things. There are things we need to fix to attract more investment. Iraq traditionally has worked through the economic committees, as you know, Doctor. When I was a minister, I headed the Iraqi economy for Germany, for Brazil, for Poland, for Czech Republic, and I conducted meetings to attract investment across all sectors of the economy, be it education, agriculture, industry, health, technology, development. We need to activate those committees, and we need to get ambassadors in every country to actually follow on implementing the agreement signed by the two ministries. And that is not taking place. We have meetings being conducted by the foreign minister, who is head of economic committee to half a dozen countries. Other ministers also have portfolios. They are taking large number of representatives from all ministries to these countries. They are signing agreements. It's not being followed on. We need to get our embassies to follow on all the agreements that are being signed by the economic committees, and that is one way of dealing with it. KRG is now part of Iraq, and we would like to be part of every economic committee that represents Iraq when they go to other countries. We used to, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, a representative from KRG, government or minister, would join an Iraqi economic committee when they go to Germany, to the US, to the UK, to India, and so on. That is not happening anymore, and we need to fill that gap as well. Just a political representation is not enough. There is opportunity here. we have great experience, and we need to plug that in, and that is the strategy for the government. We have the Deputy Prime Minister here, and the President also, and I believe all the head of the political parties and entities concur in the fact that we need to work jointly to get better share of investment and businesses coming to the KRG without affecting the Iraqi share, which we are proud and very happy for them to have.
For us to succeed, in addition to our ambassadors selling better our country, our guest ambassadors need to sell us better to their capitals. So with the key challenges you have in Germany in relation to Ukraine, now also the situation over last week, the economy, and so on. How do you want to sell Iraq to your capital in relation to the priorities so that the support can happen?
Well, you know that Germany, first and foremost, is an exporting country. So we are always keen to open new markets, not only for German products, but also to actually export German knowledge, know-how, which means investment and production facilities into other countries. So this is the market. This is the opportunity. That's what I meant when I said there is potential. We need to tap it. You know, potential alone isn't worth anything, but once we can create an affiliate, once we can create jobs here. So I would start, talking to companies, and we will do that in about 5 weeks during the Baghdad International Fair, where we have over 40 German companies that will come to Baghdad. And I hope that also representatives of KRG will be there, because they come once, they don't come every week. You need to use that opportunity. The interest is very high. The second point, of course, is Germany actually needs labor. We are lacking labor. It's qualified labor mostly, but there is also the possibility of that movement. It's both ways. We are a labor market in search of qualified staff. So there are opportunities as well, which can go either way. So the list is, I think, fairly long. You can do this in cooperation of technical universities and engineering classes to specify. For that, that's what I mentioned in the beginning, it would be interesting to see what are the strategies for diversifying the economy in this country, also here in KRG, to go away from hydrocarbon. Where do you want to go? Because it's not 50 different professions, it's specific ones. Where is the cutting edge for Iraq? How can we sell Iraq as this is the place to be if you want to do this or if you want to do that? So this is where I think this is a partnership. It needs us to work together. Where do we have the possibilities? Where is our offer? At the same time, where is the offer here? Which is the offer here in Iraq?
So, Ambassador Hines, let's say there's an ongoing or near meeting between the Prime Minister and your Prime Minister, and you've been asked to put some talking point to your own Prime Minister. What talking point would you put in relation to reform?
I basically would like to answer that question by, and sorry for the sake of the panel, I still call you a doctor, but you said, what does Iraq has to offer? Well, Iraq has to offer its human capital. I think that is very important. And one thing that strikes me after 1 year in Iraq is that I see so many talented young people in Iraq, both in the KRG and in federal Iraq, very clever, far more intelligent than I am, doing a lot of great things. And what the Netherlands want to do is to tap that potential. We have several programs, Orange Corner, Orange Knowledge, etc. But in essence, what we want to do is to give them a chance in order to use the full potential for Iraq. And what basically works best is to connect this young generation by, for instance, pushing them in startups or helping them to set up startups and connecting them to universities. It starts already at university. And then also connect them to the government. In the Netherlands, we call that kind of a triple model, where the universities, the academia, let's say, the government, and the private sector works together. That's a model that works very well when it comes to agriculture, water management, etc. And again, there is that potential that should be tapped. If not, people, it has been said before by Mr. Wafd Talabani, people will migrate, people will not have an opportunity here. That is not in the interest of Iraq at all.
Dr. Fawzi. You talked about the KRG representation in the various delegations.
Yeah.
People may ask you, is it one KRG? How do you reflect back on the cohesiveness of the Kurdish politics so that others do see that? What are the key challenges you think on that aspect?
I think the development of Kurdistan region of Iraq has no political boundaries. It's all one, and it is managed by a government that is cross-represented from everybody who has an interest in progressing for better life and better Kurdistan region. So I don't believe any political issues, and it is very, very normal to have that. We have that in the United States houses, and we have that everywhere. So that's very normal for us. But when it comes to developing our own country, Iraq, our own part of it, Kurdistan region, to provide a better life for our citizens, I think it's everybody's responsibility. Working through Baghdad is now much easier than it was 10 years ago. We have a more responsive Prime Minister, more responsive cabinet. Yes, there are still some serious challenges with regards to the way they are implementing the budget law. We have some other challenges, the way they are conducting the relationship with regards to our civil servants. But overall that, and our challenges with Baghdad should not be minimized to paying salaries. We have a far more strategic role to play if we are to have a more stabilized, prosperous Iraq. And therefore, I think we have a better understanding now. Prime Minister, we believe the gentleman is a genuine person. He is thinking as a genuine Iraqi. He wants to assist. Obviously, there are certain limitations which we understand, but we are, the KRG, the government, the presidency, the political parties still fully support his vision of the new Iraq. And therefore, we can build on that. That is by no means that everything is smooth. There are bumps on the road, but I think we are at the moment on the right road.
Great.
Yeah.
So we will have about 15 minutes for question and answers. Please make them questions, and if you can target the question, that might be better. Please put on the, if in case they, gentlemen, please.
Thank you very much. It's Davar Mohammed. I have a question for the German ambassador to Iraq. With regards to the issue of migration, I think there are about 30,000 Iraqi asylum seekers whose application have been rejected by Germany. My question is, what is next? What will be the fate of these rejected applications? Will they be deported back to their country? Because I think they claim that they have special cases. And with regards to your comment on if you search Iraq on Google, only photos of extraction shows up. I think that's more the issue of algorithms rather than the reality. Thank you very much.
I'll get 3 questions and then let you each answer, please. Make it a question, please.
شكرا جزيلا. الحقيقة في البداية شكرا جزيلا. الحقيقة في البداية أستاذ لقمان توجه بسؤال مهم اللي هو السؤال الملتقى، الأولويات العاجلة اللي موجودة بالعراق. يبدو أنه الحديث تركز بالنسبة لألمانيا ولهولندا أيضا حول الأولويات الاقتصادية. صحيح السياسة تعبير مركز عن الاقتصاد ومن حق أي بلد أن يهتم بهذا الموضوع، لكن سؤالي ما أدري إلى أي مدى ضمن أولويات ألمانيا وهولندا أيضا رغم اهتمامهم بملف الجينوسايد، الإبادة الجماعية المرتكبة بحق الإيزيديين. البرلمان الألماني كانت له مواقف مشرفة وهولندا كذلك، وزارتنا وزيرة الخارجية الألمانية ومسؤولين هولنديين أيضا. لكن سؤالي للسفيرين، ما أدري حاليا في هذه الدولتين درجة الاهتمام والأوليات في تثبيت هذه الإبادة الجماعية المرتكبة. هذا سؤال. الثاني للأستاذ فوزي، اتحدث عن أسلوب الإنتاج، إنه إحنا بالعراق هل هو أسلوب إنتاج رأسمالي أو أسلوب إنتاج اشتراكي؟ أعتقد أكاديمياً في العراق وفي كردستان أيضاً لا أسلوب الإنتاج هو رأسمالي ولا هو اشتراكي أيضاً، بقدر ما هناك مصطلح موجود إنه النمط الآسيوي للإنتاج. فما أدري إحنا إلى أي درجة ملتزمين أيضاً بهذا النمط. شكراً.
تانيا سؤال وليس comment, please.
Thank you very much. The first thing I must say is that, Madam Ambassador, even though you've been here for a short time, but it seems that you understand Iraq quite well. I think the question is, a lot of you do speak about the diversification of economy, and this is something that even within the Iraqi government, even with the Kurdistan government, something that we talk about all the time. But I think we need to be taught how to do that. How can your governments help us? I think it was very interesting what both of you, Mr. and Madam Ambassador, said, that it's important that you're supporting us in other ways and not just in terms of giving us things. And I think that's what's important. Teach us how to fish. Do not give us the fish. That is the first thing. The second thing that I would like to say as well is that, and I think it was Ambassador Faily, he touched on it, is the human rights abuses, unfortunately, that we are seeing that are taking place in Iraq right now. I think it's important as well to hold the Iraqi government accountable to the atrocities that are happening, whether it's against freedom of speech, against the journalists, and against others. So I think this is something important as well, that Iraq, even though we are going in the right direction, but it's also important to have international oversight to ensure that we are going in the proper, through the proper channels, and ensuring that democracy that we do have is becoming better and better. Thank you.
The last question regarding human rights, I would like Dr. Fawzi to answer that as well. Regarding human rights in Iraq. In Iraq, yeah. Please, ambassadors. Feel free to share between you who is going to answer the questions.
I think
Start, please.
No, I think the speaker or sister understand that there is still a challenge with regards to human rights in Iraq. That's why that question appears all the time, and nobody is safe from that, be it human rights in terms of having equal opportunities, human rights in the light of women's rights, human rights in the light of journalism. What specific human rights are we referring to? Collectively, there are challenges. Everybody admits to it. I don't think anybody is unclear that exists, but the real answer should be that there is a serious commitment to deal with that. And that serious commitment goes in line with developing the standard of living of our people, developing our economy, developing our education, even developing our social skills. And there are many, many issues that relate to children's rights, women's rights, and then we come to political views and then journalistic views. There are challenges. There is no magic wand in dealing with them. We admit to it, and then admitting is halfway of solving a lot of these challenges. But if I may just follow on to السؤال اللي تفضل به الأخوة ورقات الإنتاج هو an observation صحيح، لكن أنا لا أتكلم عن الإنتاج الرأسمالي أو المنتج الرأسمالي. هو هذا النظام الاقتصادي وحتى النظام القائم بالعراق، هل هو نظام سياسي أو هو نظام اشتراكي؟ هذا القرار له تبعات على الاقتصاد الوطني وعلى كافة مؤسسات الدولة. وإلى الآن نحن تابعين للاقتصاد والنظام الاشتراكي بالعمل، من ناحية العمالة الموجودة، من ناحية التوقع من المواطن أنه في حال تخرج من الجامعة الحكومة ملزمة بتوفير فرصة عمل له، وليس هذا الواقع في الدول الغربية ودول العالم أجمع. لذلك احنا لدينا تيرن اراوند، عندنا انتاج ما يعادل 300,000 خريج جامعي سنويا يتوقعون من الدولة أن توفر لهم وظائف، وهذه غير موجودة في أي بلد من العالم. فكيف علينا أن نتخطى هذه التحديات ولكن بنفس الوقت أن نوفر فرص عمل لهؤلاء الخريجين؟ لا يمكن تركهم، ولكن لا يمكن احتوائهم في النظام الحكومي المؤسساتي. من هالمنطلق توسيع القطاع الخاص والعمل مع شركائنا لتوفير فرص عمل في مجالات خارج المؤسسة الحكومية قد تكون خطوة لحل هذه وحلحلة هذه المشاكل. شكرا.
You had the issues of migration, you had the issues of the Yazidis, you also had the issues of the minorities, how to deal with them, and maybe also the should you focus on diversity of the economy, or should you focus on other priorities Iraq needs? Please share it between you two.
Never an easy question. I think the easiest is the migration question. Of course, you were right. We have about 30,000 Iraqis who have not been granted asylum in Germany, who actually have to leave Germany, which will successfully and in steps will happen. So they will return to Iraq. Quite a number of them will return also to the Kurdish region because they are originally from this region. But there's also the second part of this, because what we have increased is the opportunity to come legally to Germany when you have a job, to actually come back as workforce. So it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street that has been opened. With the question of the Yazidis and the genocide, yes, the Bundestag has passed this resolution, but this is only the beginning of a process. I mean, this is a German national thing, but to recognize a genocide internationally, you need the UN. So this is a process that actually we can do jointly then in the UN process to move this forward. It's not the end of the road, it's the beginning. And the other point I find extremely important is the justice system has to deal with these crimes. And this is why UNITAD is so important, because they collect evidence on this. And we need to make sure that the perpetrators cannot walk freely. I think that's a core element. Okay. Diversification, let me start just with one element, I think, which is front, center, top, bottom of everything. Unless we increase the power generation, the provision of electricity across the country, lots of businesses will not be interested in coming. But that is easier said than done. This doesn't happen overnight. But this is where one of our focuses is, and how can we help Iraq as a country to become more independent in generating its own electricity to actually sustain it also for the economic development that we hope will happen in the country as a precondition. The rest I leave to you, Hans.
Okay.
Yeah, I must say I start with the human rights. The long-term stability for Iraq, legitimate stability, durable stability, it goes without saying you need a strong economy, hence the attention for economic matters, for commerce. But you also need a very dynamic, civil and strong civil society. And so it goes without saying that you have to respect, to support a civil society, and where that civil society is shrinking in several parts of Iraq, of course that's a matter of concern. When it comes to the Yazidis and the cause of the Yazidis, I mean, that's very dear to our heart, to all of us. What happened, that is of course tremendously bad. What we try to do is to support the Yazidis, but not only the Yazidis, there are also other minorities who also suffered a lot. We do that indeed, like the German Bundestag did. We also passed a resolution a couple of years ago in Dutch Parliament, but indeed, as my German colleague said, more needs to be done. Lobbying within the EU and definitely also in the UN. That is also a good basis for the government to take that decision and say it's a genocide. It has to do with the legal side of how we see that. But also in practical terms, we try to focus much on reintegration of the IDPs, including the Yazidi communities. We give psychosocial help. But I think when it comes to accountability, it is absolutely important that there is evidence, real evidence, also legal evidence, so that those people who committed those crimes will be brought to court and will be punished. I think that's also important. There are other elements that we support, for instance, giving capacity building on the bodies that deal with missing persons. Missing persons, of course, not only relating to what happened to the Yazidis, but what happened to already in Iraq already a long time ago. But also, something that is very relevant is demining. Throughout Iraq, we give a lot of support to activities, demining activities, because that is an important precondition for IDPs, including Yazidis, to come back home to the places of origin, and to make sure that there is a proper livelihood. So we do a lot, and to reassure you, it's not only the attention on the economy, and especially its diversification of the economy getting rid of corruption, getting rid of red tape. There's much more that we as the Netherlands and as international community, I have to say, do.
Thank you. Thank you. Bayan Khan, you have the speaker. I have a question for you. Can the mic, please? Mic? Somebody needs to pass the mic. Fundamentally, you represented KRG for the last 8 years or 9 years as my colleague in Washington. What we talked about today as selling the country, Iraq 1, Iraq 2, KRG 1, KRG 2, does it make sense? And how do you think, in reflection of your last 8 years representing KRG?
Thank you very much. I thought I was going to ask the question.
I know. I abused the position I have in by raising this question with you.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I was the KRG representative in Washington, before that in London, and I had a great honor to represent Kurdistan. To be honest, sometimes it's very easy to promote Kurdistan as a place to do business, as a place to visit. Other times it's very challenging. But overall, I think we were quite successful in bringing American trade organizations such as the US Chamber, which signed an MOU with the Kurdistan Chambers of Commerce, and the US Kurdistan Business Council, and other organizations from the UK. So I think on the business front, it's not that difficult. There are incentives, there are opportunities. But there's one thing that the panel didn't address, which is why I wanted to ask a question. You addressed the economic challenges, but all of you avoided what His Excellency Fawzi Hariri raised. Is this a federal country or not? How can we convince our fellow Iraqis that federalism will deepen and strengthen democracy, sovereignty and stability in Iraq? That's the question, I think, and that should be the priority for all of us in Iraq.
Maybe
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Maybe the next conference, that's a good theme to address. Let me thank you all for your participation, ideas, insights, and let me thank the panel, the audience for their questions. We will have the next session. Thank you.